Hello, and welcome to another episode of Warlock Solos for Mounts, this time featuring Magister's Terrace Heroic. In this guide, I'm going to be covering the strats, talents, and skills that you'll need to effectively and efficiently farm for the Swift White Hawkstrider. For starters, I would give this a run of 4 to 5 Shadow Bolt difficulty level. I believe it to be the hardest soloable content for a mount at the moment. This is in part due to the need for the dual talents as well as the cooldown management and having somewhat reasonable gear. I'd recommend using both Affliction and Demonology for this run. Both of them using the PvE talent tree that you would see on the screen. While this run is just doable with one or the other, you will have a much easier time if you have both of these specializations, as they make specific sections a lot easier. With that, let's get into it. Here on screen, you're going to see the different gear that I'm using. I would recommend having at least max level gear at level 80, or maybe a PvP equivalent. While this run is probably doable by a fresh level 80 with questing greens, you can have a much harder time than if you have a little bit better gear, especially in survivability and having to get through the third boss in this section. Overall, I would recommend having both of these talents just to have the best efficiency. As I mentioned, you can do this as just one or the other, but it leads to a lot of variability. Getting started, we're going to buff up. You don't need any specific buffs or potions or anything of the like, though always you can use things like armor potions and world buffs and other class buffs to make this run easier. We're going to start off with these two mobs here. These are technically skippable, but I don't recommend it. They can oftentimes aggro at you and it's just more convenient. We're going to start off in Affliction just to get through these mobs. Just make it a little bit easier, a little bit more sustainable. We'll just kill them. We're going to make our way up. Again, I would recommend looting everything in here, as they can drop some pretty good items, and you can sell a lot of the greens that you drop here or disenchant them. We're going to wait for this next pack. Oftentimes, I would recommend just killing it, especially if you see yourself coming back several times for wipes or any reason of the sort. Just wait for them to come closer to you and then kill them. You can also fight them at the very end of their patrol on the other end, where they're going to now, but you're going to have a bigger pull, and sometimes that might be a little bit more dangerous. We're just going to be waiting for them here to pad around the tree, and then we'll go into the pack at the end of the walkway. Here at the end of the hallway, we're just going to send in our pet to face tank, pull the aggro on the other things, and then we're just going to seed off the others. We need only a couple of seeds to do most of the damage, and then we'll pop meta to clear off everything else. You can do this without popping Metamorphosis, but you might take a little bit too much damage. It's just not worth being risky. Here's the reason that we really start in Demo. It's these sets of packs, and there's a lot of ways to do them. I recommend, if you have the skill and the time with the cooldown left on your Metamorphosis, just come in here and seed one group down with your pet. The damage mitigation is really what's going to save you here. Hopefully you'll have enough time, and then you can kite around the edges here. There's many different ways, though. Make sure to use your cooldowns, your survivability, to make the most out of it. This wasn't really the best example. As you can see, I still have too many of them alive, and I'm just dotting and life draining. This could go a lot cleaner if you do other methodologies. For example, you could swap to Affliction and dot every single one and run them around the pillar. I don't really recommend that because you could mess up on your dots, and these guys do a little bit more damage than you would expect, especially with lower gear. The best way, and the most consistent way, is to actually just wait for your Metamorphosis cooldown, and you can just pull a lot of them and then just have Immolation Aura take them all out. Alternatively, if you pull just the two in the center of the room, you could get Decimation procs, and then by sending your pet into the large pack, you can single target Decimation anything that your pet isn't necessarily tanking, and then you would take them out one by one, with your Demonology talents keeping your pet alive at the same time. Those are all effective, and it's up to you to find whichever method works best for you. There's no harm in just waiting for your Metamorphosis off cooldown every single time, as you see me doing here. We're going to pull with Seed. Have our pet waiting for us so it can proc him. Go around the corner to LOS the Rangers. And then pop our Metamorphosis Immolation or a macro to burn all of these guys down. It's so much easier when you have Meta and Immolation Aura. I found that these groups here are really the most inconsistent in the run, so definitely take your time figuring out what works best for you. Here we're going to go into the first boss. As always, make sure to use a Soul Stone when you're going into any difficult section for yourself, as the run back is pretty annoying, especially if you haven't cleared all of the patrols in the first area. Here, I've decided to show you the Demonology route. You can absolutely do this as Affliction, but I think that Demonology might just get this kill a little bit faster, and with gear, it's probably the recommended way. You're going to have your pet tank the boss, you're going to drop your portal on the lip of the ledge here, and you're just going to pump into the boss. Even if you pull aggro at the beginning, it's fine, because his Fel Crystal activation in the beginning is going to cause him to de-aggro off of you. Here I messed up a little bit and jumped out a little bit early, but as you'll see, it's no big deal. We'll just pump into the boss for a little bit, get his health lower, and as soon as he gets off the crystal and comes back to aggro us, we're going to jump down and kite him around. He goes to the left, so we run up the right stairwell, making sure to keep our dots up. You'll see here that I have to pot or health stone, whichever one works. That's just a little bit of the error on my part because I didn't have the portal cooldown at the very beginning like I mentioned. Once he's down there, you can portal, CD, teleport back up, and just finish him off. It's a very simple boss, and both specializations can handle him very easily. Moving on to the next section, we have all these worms packs to get through. These are really easy. The only annoying thing is that your pet bugs out every now and then on that ledge there, as you saw you teleported. And sometimes it takes a while. You can just run through and pull these guys in sections. You could go nice and slow, cleave them down with your pet, and just life drain to maintain your full health. On occasion, you're going to actually see this patrol that comes down to put a box down in the middle of this hallway. You can completely ignore it or just kill it. It doesn't really matter because it despawns once it goes back. Getting into these groups, you're just going to send your pet and seed them down, meta, and then they'll all die really, really fast. I don't really recommend doing this section as Affliction, even though we'll be swapping to Affliction for the second boss, mostly because the damage mitigation that you gain in Demon form is a little bit too necessary. As you can see, that was a little bit close, but it's, again, totally doable if you pull them at range and run away. So here for the second boss, we're going to switch to Affliction. It's doable in Demonology as well, but I think, again, as I mentioned over and over, this explanation of the run is all about consistency and about making it as safe as possible for you to do the run. So I recommend going Affliction for the second boss. This is mostly because of the sustainability, and because we can continuously do damage with our giant hitting dots because of the damage buff of his ads when they die. See my add-on breaking there, so I have to summon our pet the long way. We're just going to open up normally. Life tap, Shadow Bolt Haunt, regular Affliction rotation. And we're going to pull aggro, which is totally okay. As soon as we do, we're going to start running back with our dots. He doesn't hurt at all. And then as soon as the ads spawn, we're going to double dot one corruption on each, and then just run backwards. When his ads come out, the very initially, he actually doesn't follow you if you run away, which is why you see him only coming after you once you dot both of the ads. This really helps mitigate the damage. Once you've gotten around 6 to 8 stacks, depending on how much you want, you're just going to life drain the boss, and he's going to die very, very fast, and you're going to be gaining around 5,000 health per tick, which makes this boss extremely easy and extremely safe. Immediately after, we're just going to switch to the Demonology again. And this is why I believe that Demonology is absolutely mandatory. It's because of the third boss, this little PvP section that we all know and love from our time of farming Shards of Contempt for our melees. But first, we have to get there. We don't have to fight any more trash on our way to the third boss. It just takes a little bit long to run there. But if you follow this route, it's going to be super duper easy. You come around this corner, and these Sunblade Sentinels will never aggro you. If it's closer to you, you can just run around the first little light pillar instead of what I did there. And if this one's close, you can also do the same thing. Just hug the walls, and you'll be totally fine. Here, there's one patrol that you can see on the screen now coming close to us. We just have to wait for him to start moving away before we can make the skip of this entire section. I don't recommend summoning your pet, however, because there's often chances that your pet can pull. Additionally, I would really recommend having a Soul Stone at this point, because if you accidentally pull one of the packs, you're probably going to die. As the Magister moves away, we're going to stay on the right side of this walkway, turn left, go to the right of this tree, and run straight for the edge. Here we're just going to jump over the trunk, jump up on this little hedge, and we have to wait once again for the Magister to come to this end, turn around, and go back from where he came. With that out of the way, you just have to get past the Sentinel. As soon as he turns around, we're going to give it a second, then go after him. You run a little bit faster than him, so just don't get too close. And we'll come here. Now we can summon our pet. Once again, add on bugging out. And here, I recommend clearing out this pack. Mostly because it gives us a little bit of space to work with when we're fighting the boss, but also because if we get feared or anything, these guys could really cause a lot of issues. So I recommend clearing this out. Sometimes you'll need to meta here, sometimes you won't. Just do whatever is most comfortable for you. Here I panicked a little bit, I probably didn't need to meta. So now I'll have to wait for the cooldown for the next boss. Now, coming up is the most RNG-based section of the run, and it's this PvP group that we can call the boss. The reason that this is so annoying, especially for us as Warlocks, and the reason why Demonology is so important, is because the siege chain can sometimes just not go in your favor. If you run into Warrior, Rogue, Hunter, Shaman, and Deliria, it's just sometimes extremely annoying to get any sort of ability off because you'll be CC'd to all oblivion. And even though Metamorphosis reduces the CC on us, it sometimes can still be extremely hard when their heals are doing more than our Immolation Aura can do. So I recommend setting up your portal right here around this corner. This is just so that you can immediately port instead of running on the pull. And in case that you get CC'd far away, you can immediately come back and create some distance between you and the mobs. Hopefully get a Seed of Corruption off. You can see in this pack we have something that we can banish. You can banish the demons, either the engineer guy or the hunter. And that sometimes makes it a little bit easier, although it's not fully required. There's many different ways, and you're going to have to adapt to all of the strategies of having the different combinations of enemies. But most of the time I recommend sending your pet into a Poco or Princess. And that's mostly because your pet can stop the healing and sort of create some distance between you. However, I would recommend calling them back immediately after. So here we start off with a Seed and a Banish. And then as soon as they round the corner, we're going to pop Metamorphosis and spam Seeds. You can see our Immolation Aura doing a ton of damage. And this particular set of NPCs was easy to handle. We're going to unbanish, kill the last guy, and we'll be done with this section. Look at that. Too bad there's no melees in here. Now we just have one more pack to get to before the final boss, and I recommend staying in Demonology for this. Once again, to make it super safe, I would recommend waiting for Metamorphosis again, but it's completely doable with good gear and with good mechanics to send in your pet, let it tank for a little bit, and just seed off everything. Here we're just going to wait for the Metamorphosis cooldown. Now that we have our cooldown ready to go and our health is topped up, we can just get into this pack. The most annoying one is this Ethereum guy, the smuggler, but you just send your pet in on him and then you'll seed everything else. You can kite them back around the corner, well, we'll do something similarly to the previous boss and pop meta to kill them all. I think that what I'm showing on screen here isn't the most effective, but it's one of the more safe options. Finally, we're going to be getting into the last boss. Once his RP is done, we can use the time to switch over to Affliction. Again, the final boss is killable in Demonology, but you're going to have a hard time surviving, and the fireballs do more damage than you might expect. So you really want the sustainability from Haunt and Corruption. We're going to put our portal in the corner, just so that we can LOS his fireballs if need be. Keep in mind that hitting Counterspell off of your Fell Hunter might cause him to run melee, which does a certain amount of damage. But if you phase him fast enough to the point where he throws you up into the air, you'll have no issue whatsoever. The only real mechanic that this boss has, outside of his fireballs and making an AoE on the ground that you have to get out of, is the Phoenix that he spawns. I recommend just throwing a Corruption and an Agony on it so that it dies in the meantime and you get the extra healing. Once it turns into the egg, you can do the same thing, but it's not completely necessary. So here we'll open up, we'll have the Fireball cast on us, and we'll just go over here, LOS, while we have our dots ticking. He spawns his Phoenix and runs at us. We're going to LOS. We're just going to get out of this AoE. Dot the Phoenix. Take a little bit of damage running through him. Make sure our dots are rolling. Life Drain if need be. Portal back if need be. And then once he does his little RP at 50%, this fight's basically won. Once you're in the air, you can just keep your dots up and run away from the spheres, basically having one tick of your soul drain. You'll be good. Since the tether only does around 300 damage, you can easily out-heal that. You can see me flailing around in the sky a little bit, but just keep it calm, keep it collected, and you'd be totally fine for the boss. Even if he comes into this phase, you could just kill him while he's transitioning. And there you have it. That's how we can solo Magister's Terrace Heroic. I wish you all the best of luck in farming your Swiftwhite Hawkstriders, and hopefully along the way you get the little pet Phoenix as well. Good luck, and happy hunting.